So the first thing I'm going to start off with saying is thank you for joining us on the program.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You grew up in Calgary. What was that like, and are you a Flames fan?
Actually, I grew up in a small southern Alberta town called Brooks, Alberta. It's about an hour and a half drive southeast of Calgary, closer to Medicine Hat. And growing up there was a very unique situation because it was a small town of, at the time when I was there, just 10,000 people, and there's very few visible minorities. What made it unique was that I was a kid who, was wearing a turban and ate different food at home, spoke a different language at home, listened to different music with my family, and a lot of differences, more differences almost than there were commonalities amongst my classmates. But I learned early on that it was hockey that was a great icebreaker for me to create friendships and to create a rapport with my classmates and my teachers. And utilizing hockey, my passion for hockey helped me to create that bond with people who I might not have been friends with. And it totally changed that experience for me in that small town. Had it not been for hockey, I think I would have had a much different experience growing up there.
Okay, so you just mentioned this hockey as an icebreaker. So did they treat you a little bit differently? Were they curious about the turban and like the certain foods that you ate, or were they kind of accepting to it?
I think the questions were something I dealt with on a daily basis. I mean, people were very curious about the differences, such as the turban, or we wear, as practicing Sikhs, we wear a steel bracelet on our wrist to remember the Creator at all times. Just little subtle things like that. There was always questions. My parents taught me to always, to not be confrontational and to be, look at it as an opportunity to teach someone about yourself and what our heritage was. And for me, being a hockey fan, growing up in a family where my older siblings were already hockey fans and we were watching it a lot, and I was kind of immersed in hockey from a very young age. Like a lot of my toys and a lot of my clothes were hockey related. So I was the kid that in the classroom pictures, I'm wearing the Gretzky sweater and that kind of thing. And I think it just made it fun for people. And I noticed that it was easier to create friends amongst my classmates when it had to do with hockey. When I reflect back on it now, I can see that there's so many people who I was friends with that was through hockey, and I don't know how it would have been had I not been such a big fan.
You mentioned on George Stropalopoulos that your great-grandfather was one of the first 100 Sikhs to come to Canada. Do you have stories from your great-grandfather and that kind of journey?
Yeah, so it was obviously a time where it was a big risk to take, spending that many months on a ship to even make it here to Canada. And when one of the stories that I've been passed down are, and you can even gather from looking at historically what was being said by the prime ministers of that time, that it wasn't a very welcoming place. And it's unbelievable to think the night and day difference that it is in Canada from then until now. It seems like a completely different place now that we have these sorts of opportunities. A person like myself is able to be on television, on mainstream, and looking the way I do. But when he came here to Canada, it wasn't very welcoming. The policies that were being spoken about in the federal parliament were about a white Canada and trying to stop any sort of newcomers to be able to come, even though India being a British colony at the time, they were part of the Commonwealth. So according to those rules, you should have been able to go to different countries under the British Empire. So that was the whole idea of the opportunity that people like my great-grandfather saw. The other thing is, like, he was an interesting story that I've been told is that he was a vegetarian, and at that time, the only vegetable available here was potatoes. So apparently he was sick and tired of potatoes. He worked on the railroads and a bunch of things in British Columbia. But after a while, he felt that it was too harsh of an environment for him to stay here. So he took the risk and traveled all the way back to India, and didn't stay here in Canada. My parents then came in the 60s. So it's unbelievable when you reflect back on the early 1900s and where we are today as a country. It's completely the opposite.
When you say the term Sikhs, can you explain what that means?
Sure. So the Sikh faith is originated from Eastern Asia. India and Pakistan used to be one country before, and so Guru Nanak in 1469 created the Sikh faith. At the time, there was a lot of turmoil between Muslim and Hindu faith, and the Sikh faith was one of peace and harmony, and gender equality. And so at the time, it was very revolutionary, all of the values and the ideas that were brought forth. And so practicing Sikhs, the males wear turbans, and we keep our hair, and we also are vegetarian, and we believe in like a oneness and an openness that, that everybody is equal, and that we're all on just different paths to the same goal.
And you feel like in Canada that's a little bit more accepting nowadays? Oh,
definitely. I mean, even when you look at politics, a lot of MPs, MLAs practicing the Sikh faith, they've been able to make it far. And even myself, there was a time in television that people were told that you can't even come on television with a beard, and I've got my playoff beard going all the time. So for people like myself and my colleagues now to be able to be a part of television in Canada, it's opening doors for people in the future, for youngsters who want to try to get into media. I mean, when I was a kid in Brooks, a lot of people told me that my dream of being a part of Hockey Night in Canada was unrealistic, and that I needed to try to focus on something else because the chances of it happening were slim to none.
You went to Mount Royal University and you did communications, radio, and TV. What made you choose that career? Was it always the case of wanting to be on Hockey Night in Canada?
Yeah, it was ever since I was like 4 years old. I was like, I want to be Ron McLean, and I was calling the games that were on TV. I was running around the living room doing my own commentary. And my parents have got me a Radio Shack kids microphone stand and speaker, and I would host my own NHL awards shows. And, I wasn't put into ice hockey at a young age because we were an immigrant family, and, the priorities are to settle. And I was in a lot of other extracurricular activities on the music side and the cultural side and things, which I enjoyed too. So I played a lot of ball hockey instead of ice hockey, but I was just, as my dad, who's a major academic with 7 post-secondary degrees and a PhD, he was worried that I was making my mind into this encyclopedia of hockey. He's like, what are you going to do with it? And, but my mom was always nurturing and saying, go for your dream, go for it. It's going to work out. So I had this dream, but I was in Brooks, Alberta, a small town. So I was like, okay, what do you do? And I got an opportunity in Brooks at the local radio station to cover sports and news for my high school. And it was kind of like, that was revolutionary for me, because I was like, if I was given an opportunity here and it went well, then maybe someone down the road will give me an opportunity too. So I decided to go to Mount Royal for my broadcasting education, radio, TV, and it turned into a TSN internship and a job, and then eventually with CBC as a reporter. Lo and behold, when CBC wanted to try something more diverse and multicultural, I was already there working for them, and everybody within the CBC who I knew, they knew how obsessed I was with hockey. So it ended up, as destiny would have it, it ended up working out.
Now, just as a side note, you mentioned ball hockey. What kind of a ball hockey player are you? Are you a sniper, a playmaker, a grinder?
I'm a forward, usually a winger who likes to stick handle. And, I'm not as rough. I'm one of those, I guess, smaller stature guys who has a bit of skill. So, I like, it's shooting as well, but I love the deking out goalies and things like that. So, I don't know how you want to describe that, but it was fun playing ball hockey all those years. And it was funny because we would be in Calgary on the weekends. My parents would bring my family down there so that we could participate in our faith and cultural events. And it was all the boys from the Sunday service at the Sikh temple. We would all get together and play street hockey in Calgary on the weekend. So it totally proves that, the game of hockey brings Canadians together. And that, it is that universal force that it's a part of Canadian culture.
Of course, every Canadian, the joke is about Canadians is we come out of the womb born and ready with our skates on. How good are you on skates?
I'm not good at all backwards. I can skate forwards pretty well. But I'm not that great at stopping either. So I've got to use either the boards at momentum or more often than not, I stop the rollerblade way. So skating is not a strong asset. But it's still fun to get out there. And I only played 1 year of organized ice hockey, and the rest of my playing career was more ball hockey.
No, see, that's interesting because we have a lot of similarities. Like you have the communications and radio kind of TV background and the ball hockey background, which I'm key to as well. You mentioned, of course, about finding yourself at CBC. If you don't mind me asking, can you take us through that whole process of getting your first kind of shot at CBC?
Yeah, well, what happened was that when I was in school, I was able to land a fairly highly coveted internship with TSN, where they chose only 8 broadcasting students across Canada. So I was chosen as one of them. So from Calgary, from very quickly from small town Brooks to Calgary in school to my second year of university, I moved to Toronto to work for TSN, and it turned into a job, and it was more on the production side of things. So I gained a lot of experience and life experience too, living on my own at a young age. But then I realized that, for what I was making and for the cost of living and being away from, all my family and being the youngest in the family and stuff, it didn't make sense at that time to stick that out. And so after a year, I decided to head back to Calgary, and I was fortunate enough to have my professors at Mount Royal give me a recommendation to the CBC in Calgary. And so from there, that relationship started out where I was a reporter with CBC in Calgary, and I was always trying to pitch as many hockey stories as I could. And I remember when Crosby came to town and things, I got to cover that. Or I also remember, my first few times at the Saddle Dome in Calgary, where Jerome McGinley, I was very new and green to this whole process of covering sports. And first few times at the Saddle Dome, Jerome McGinley went out of his way to make me feel comfortable. I don't know if he felt that if I was, new to it or what, but he went out of his way to shake my hand and say hello, how are you doing, and welcome and stuff. So that kind of stuff went a really long way. And then within the CBC, because it was Calgary, I would see Kelly Rudy and Cassie Campbell every so often, and especially with Kelly Rudy, I would always jump up and go talk to him and things like that. And that rapport that we developed when CBC wanted to start this whole process, then having that relationship with Kelly Rudy really helped. The guys from Toronto, the executive producer Joel Darling once called the desk that I was at for a CBC reporter shift for local news. And that's when he told me about the idea of doing this in Punjabi. I had no idea this was coming. First of all, I was like, is this even real? But then really quickly, obviously, I agreed to it, and we were able to call the first time we were ever on the air. It was the Stanley Cup final between Detroit and Pittsburgh in 2008. So the first time when they met 2 years in a row. And that was the first games ever that we called in Punjabi were straight to the Stanley Cup final, but it was a hit with the community and the media attention we got. And it was a great experience. And then afterwards I went home, didn't know what to expect. And we got a call closer to the beginning of the regular season saying that they wanted to do this full time every Saturday night. And so that 2008 is when it started, and here we are today, and things are
still going strong.
Yeah, exactly.
English and Punjabi are different languages. I know, like, some words can translate into English or French and Spanish, but can you translate some hockey terms for me from English to Punjabi?
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with it. I mean, we add some dramatic flair and some humor and masala, as you could say, some spices to it. So I really penalty box. We've created it as, I coined it as Saja da Dabba, which then when you translate it back into English, it means box of punishment. So it's more fun, it's more dramatic, and our feedback has been that people really love that kind of stuff. And we have a slap shot, which we didn't have an exact translation of. So we took the slap to the face and made it Chapered shot. So when you think about it, it's a fun term. We made a hybrid term like that, and people in the community just love that stuff.
Sportsnet and CBC have been doing a great job at exposing you in the commercials for the network, whether it's showing you doing a community event or showing you doing something of highlighting a volunteer in that community. Do you think this helps people know more about you and the Hockey Night in Punjabi?
Definitely. I think that's been tremendous. And I really have to give credit to Chevrolet for seeing the value in doing that in terms of, just helping not only our show, but helping show everyone that Canada is for everyone. Giving me that opportunity has been tremendous. I had the opportunity to travel for the first time to the East Coast, to Nova Scotia. Didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I've heard a lot about how people are friendly there and stuff, but for myself, knowing that there wasn't a large Sikh community there, you don't really know what to expect. But what was amazing to see is that people there knew all about our show. And having done those commercial segments or those community or volunteer videos, people were well aware of those because a lot of Canadians are watching that playoff hockey, and when those segments are airing at that time, a lot of people are watching. So it's been a really tremendous experience to be able to do that, and it really has raised the ball in terms of awareness of who I am, what we're doing, what the show is, and all of that.
And the last question here to finish it off is, do you consider yourself an inspiration or role model for others in your shoes? Because I know they had, I'm guessing it was your wife on at one point on these CBC things, and she mentions, like, when you go home to your community, you have a lot of the younger audience coming up to you and, like, saying, I can't believe you made it this far. Now it feels like I can do this as well.
I don't consider myself anybody special, but if I am able to open doors for others in the future, then I'm really happy to be able to do that. Not only myself, but my colleagues at Hockey Night Punjabi, when we are able to go out to community events or even talk to schools, kids at school, students, that's when it's been a really rewarding experience to have people come up and say that what you guys have done is really inspiring, and we want to do this when we graduate and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of kids have told us, like, they never envisioned that with the way they looked, they would even have these sorts of opportunities. And for us to be able to open these doors for them is great. And I just want to also say that my colleagues, Pupinder, Randeep, Harp, and our producer Nathan, they all do such a fabulous job. The show where it's at right now, 10 years in is a night and day huge difference as to where it was when it began. And it's through all of the team's efforts, in especially since our show moved on to Rogers and Omni, the production value, the production quality, the resources we have, the team that we have, everything has gone up. It's a top-notch program now where we're able to provide highlights of other Canadian teams in our pregame and postgame chats, and provide just a more well-polished program for our audience.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Harnarayan Singh for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying, thanks for listening, and good night.